Joining us now on the Deseret First Credit Union hotline is Seth Davis, the pride of Potomac, Maryland, CBS men's college basketball insider, analyst, and writer for The Athletic. Seth, welcome to BYU Sports Nation.
Great to talk to you guys. How you doing today? Glad we're talking college basketball in late May. Must have done something right.
You have done something right. You have pleased the BYU fans by going after the always entertaining Mark Pope. What did you learn about him that you didn't know before?
Well, I didn't know a lot about his background, to be honest. As a player at Kentucky, and didn't really follow his career from that. I mean, I knew that he was coaching Utah Valley, and obviously knew that he had gotten this job. But, I didn't know much about his pro career. There's not a whole lot to know. But what I really did not know was his experience going to medical school, and the fact that he's a Rhodes Scholar candidate at Kentucky, and, all the things that he's accomplished outside of basketball. So just a really impressive guy. It was really fun to, go over to his house and sit with his wife and his 4 daughters and talk to him for a couple hours and really break him down and motivates him. And no question, BYU got a good one.
Obviously, talking to him, you can experience his energy. What was your reaction when he was hired by BYU after Dave Rose retired?
Well, it made sense. I knew he was right down the road at Utah Valley and had made some waves there. I wasn't following it super closely. Frankly, I did not know that he was Mormon. So, it's not like, it took a long time. It seemed pretty evident at the very start, as soon as Dave announced his retirement, that Mark Pope was going to succeed him. So, it was pretty interesting, watching his career. It's happened, pretty quickly. He went to Georgia for a year, went to Wake Forest for a year, came to BYU to be an assistant for 5 years, and, head coach for 4. And here he is. I think he's, 46 years old, I want to say, 47 thereabouts. So, given how late a start he got getting into coaching, I think his rise has happened quite quickly.
Seth, you cover college basketball from a national perspective and standpoint. That being said, what was your impression of what Dave Rose did between 2005 and 2019 at BYU?
Well, I thought Dave did a great job, and it's not easy coming from that conference to be super effective. Obviously, you've got Gonzaga dominating things, and everybody else kind of fighting for scraps. That BYU, its reach, its resources, its tradition, its history, definitely brings a lot to the table for a coach. And I thought Dave did a good job. It's like I said, it's not easy coming out of that conference. And frankly, I got a chance to spend a little bit of time with Dave at his Coaches versus Cancer golf event while I was visiting Provo. And I think, most of us did not realize the extent to which his health issues were still very much a part of his life. We knew that he had the scare with the pancreatic cancer, which is a very frightening type of cancer to get. And fortunately, he has a rare form that's actually treatable, but it does require consistent treatment. And as Dave said to me, the stress of keeping all of that secret was as tough on him and his family as it was just in terms of getting the treatment that he needed. So I think the timing is good for him to step aside, to be able to leave on his own terms, and to bring in a guy like Mark, who he obviously likes and respects, I think is a win-win all around.
Seth, regardless of the sport that you talk about, at BYU, coaches are usually here for a while. You just look at football with Lavelle, and Bronco was here for 10 years. Dave Rose had been here for 14, and Roger Reed, guys like that. Mark Pope, his name was mentioned in some other jobs before he got the BYU job. Do you expect him to be a long-term BYU guy like we're typically used to seeing?
Well, first of all, I feel very confident in saying that if Mark Pope had not gotten hired by BYU, if Dave Rose had not retired, that he would not be coaching at Utah Valley. He was very much in the mix for some pretty significant jobs and was probably very close to taking perhaps one in particular when Dave called him to say that he was retiring. So I think it's great credit to BYU that their coaches have stuck around so long. I think that this sort of, instant gratification, changing the tonal culture that we have in sports and in college athletics and athletic directors wanting to see a lot of coaches, getting pushed out who, frankly, don't deserve to be. And I think it's the responsibility of the university and its extended university community to build a culture coaches feel like they can suffer through a couple of down years. I mean, I always invoke the example of Jay Wright. He had a couple of, kind of down years a while back where, people were starting to speculate whether or not he would make it, and Villanova was very clear to him, you're safe. We want you thinking long term. More importantly, we don't want you cutting any corners. And so, that's where guys get into compromising situations. So I give BYU a lot of credit. Obviously, their larger mission with the Church of Latter-day Saints and that. And, I think everybody, including Mark Pope, would love to think about him being there for as long as Dave was and having the kind of success that Dave had.
Follow him at Seth Davis Hoops on the Twitter machine. Seth Davis, managing editor for The Athletic, just put out an outstanding article on Mark Pope as he got to know him. And as you said, Seth, meet with him and his family for a couple of hours. How do people read that article if they haven't already?
You go to theathletic.com and subscribe. You can follow us on Twitter. The Athletic CBB is our handle. My handle, as you mentioned, is Seth Davis Hoops. And, for those who aren't familiar with The Athletic, it's a subscription-only sports writing platform. And for $5 a month, you more than get your money's worth. No ads, no videos, no autoplays, no nothing. Just straight up great reporting, good writing, and, the type of access and coverage that I tried to deliver with this story on Mark. So hopefully people will go there and subscribe and be happy. We want to cover sports and enhance people's enjoyment of their watching the BYU Cougars.
Fantastic stuff. All right, Seth, let's go here. You mentioned down years for some other prominent college basketball coaches. By BYU standards and Dave Rose's standards, the Cougars' 19 wins last year were considered a down year. And I'm looking at that thinking, man, BYU fans are spoiled when that's the lowest number of wins he had in his entire head coaching career. But what kind of pressure do you think that adds to Mark Pope as he takes over a program that's trying to get back to that consistent basis of making the NCAA tournament at least, twice out of every 4 years?
You'd like to think something like that is possible for BYU, frankly. So I think it's 5 of the last 7 they missed. And that's probably, a little bit below the standard that I think fans have a right, frankly, to expect. I mean, just the fact that I'm on this show on a cable channel devoted only to this school. As far as I know, the only school that has that is University of Texas. So there are great resources at BYU. It is definitely challenging coming out of the West Coast Conference. And frankly, I think it speaks to just how difficult it is just to make the NCAA tournament. I don't care what league you're in. What Gonzaga has done, I think they've made 19 in a row, 20 in a row, I want to say. I mean, that's just – people take for granted how hard it is just to get into the NCAA tournament. And so and I think Mark will be the first to tell you that that is the goal every year, to get to that tournament and try to win. And, he's got to build a roster with players that he wants to coach. And, it's challenging. You have the whole – a lot of them go on missions, so they're gone. Not only are they gone for 2 years, but they don't do anything. They don't touch a ball for 2 years. The good news is that you tend to have a team that's a lot older than the ones that you're playing. So he understands the challenges. He understands the pitfalls. But as I wrote in my article, that's kind of his comfort zone where he's out on that ledge. And, he might fall and crash and fail, but he's going to fail, daring greatly. And I know that's what he's setting up to do.
Seth, how important is it in today's college basketball overall, and then specifically with BYU, to utilize the transfer portal to get where you want to go? And that's certainly something that Coach Pope did quite well at UVU and has already started doing that to a certain degree here at BYU. How important is that aspect of college basketball these days?
Oh, it's an absolute necessity. I think in a lot of ways, working the transfer market has overtaken recruiting high school players. First of all, just the sheer numbers that are involved. I mean, you're talking about 700-800 kids every year transferring. And I think the transfer portal is really helpful to everybody in terms of letting everybody know what's going on and making it transparent, a little bit more manageable. But it's a challenge and it's an opportunity. There's just a lot of roster flux. So it's pretty chaotic, but if you're not actively utilizing the transfer market, and by the way, that's a university effort. A lot of times it has to do with admissions. You're talking about, graduate transfers. They have to transfer to a school that has a program that is not in place at their current school, which I don't like because these are obviously basketball decisions, and to give it a patina of academic incentive is not totally authentic, I think. But if you're not in there, you're going to you're going to fall behind because those kids that you're not getting, you're going to have to play against, and that's no fun for anybody.
Seth, it's not often we get to talk to a guy that was a former Cable 13 sports reporter, so I think we should do this again very soon.
I appreciate that. That was a long time ago. So I think that was before the invention of electricity. But good to talk to you guys, and hope I can come on during the season.
You got to take care, man.
All right, thank you, guys.